I have an important message for a select few. That's not all of you. This is for a select few of you guys that are listening or watching this. It's for trade business owners that have been around for a while. They understand the frustrations of marketing and being in control or not being in control. Guys, it's 2021 and many of you are marketing yourselves like it's the year 2000. Off the back of a global pandemic, we've seen huge shifts in the market with people turning to service providers they know, like, and trust. There's never been a better time to establish the tools and frameworks in your business to take advantage of these things. These things that will serve you not only now, but serve the business ongoing. Over at Tradie Web Guys, we've recently launched the Elevation program. It equips businesses with the tools and the programs required to successfully market themselves. It gives you tools to re-engage with your past and present clients whilst nurturing potential clients. It creates assets in your company's name with no proprietary licenses. You own these things 100%. It gives your business a huge head start on the search engines with advanced SEO, and it collates all of the programs and all the services you need into one neat little bundle, including things like web development, website management, email marketing, SEO, Google Ads, loads of different softwares, strategy, support, and a bunch of other things. After going through this program, you'll have all the tools you need to market your business ongoing. You'll have a huge head start in your marketing, and you'll also have a CRM so you can continue to build your database whilst engaging your current customers and re-engaging those customers that you've essentially forgotten about. Marketing tools that you need, and they'll all be in your control. You don't owe anyone anything. You'll be able to dial it up and down essentially as you see fit. So why is this an important time to talk about this? Guys, it's important to know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. Meaning, you want to be in control. You want to know enough to be dangerous. I'm not trying to give you more work here. Essentially, we'll set everything up for you, teach you the basics, and then it's all yours. It's complete transparency. You'll never grow a business past a certain point without marketing. Word of mouth will only ever get you so far. We've spoken about it on the podcast a load of times. At some stage, you need to invest in these things. This is the simplest and most affordable way to do it. For more information, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/elevation, fill in the form, and let's make 2021 the year that you took control. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Danielle, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
All the way from, now, where did you tell me?
Georgia. Dalton, Georgia. You know, Matt, we are the carpet capital of the world. We make 90% of the world's carpet and now manufactured flooring. Not that many people like carpet anymore. So all the luxury vinyl, all that stuff we make here in town.
Wow. Take that, Persia. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, manufacturing.
That's not on your license plate, is it? I know when you drive through Idaho, it says the potato state, which I always found quite funny.
Yeah, that is. I don't think it is. Well, Magic Carpet capital. I guess our town is carpet capital of Magic Carpet. I don't know. But not Georgia.
Classic. Oh, good. Well, thanks for your time. We're here today to kick off a little series we're doing on planning your exit strategy. We've sort of spoken about this a number of times actually on the show over the years. For any of you guys that want to go check that out, episodes 120 to 222. That was how to sell your trades business. We're sort of a little bit more, I suppose, focusing on how to prepare things for sale, where we're diving a little bit more into planning your exit strategy, which is going to be well received. I can guarantee that. It's kind of one of those things, Danielle, that a lot of trade businesses kind of see it as like a rainbows and unicorns, like, oh yeah, I'd love to be able to, and then I hear it all the time. Oh, I'd love to be able to sell my business, but I am the business, and
yes.
it'll never be anything without me in it. And for the better part, I tell them, well, yeah, you're right.
Right.
Until you do something about that, you're right. You're absolutely right. You will never be able to sell your business, and it will always be just you. So I'm looking forward to jumping into these three conversations. And the first one is how to begin planning your exit strategy. The second one is called value building, and then the final episode we're going to be talking about how to gracefully exit and what your options are there. And before we jump into the first episode, I suppose, do you want to give us a bit of a background as to you and what you currently do and how you got into what you do and why this is a passion of yours?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, absolutely. I mean, I love telling my story. I know people like to talk about their stories.
Yeah, I love talking about myself. Hell yeah.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah. Let me, of course. Well, but Matt, it begins because I was a contractor's daughter. So I can't take all the credit and say, oh, I just know all this stuff. Absolutely not. My dad was a contractor. And so because of it, I saw the trial and error and all the pain my whole life growing up. There was 9 kids in my family and it was feast or famine. And there was a lot of time that there was no money. And so we ate a lot of red beans and rice. My mom bought these 5-gallon buckets of beans and she was able to cook on those for a long time. So we definitely did not have Lunchables like all the other cool kids in school. Those like pre-packaged lunch packs, like all the fancy foods. Grew up, but my dad was also an entrepreneur, and so he was gonna make it work, and he was determined to do that. So during my childhood, I watched him grow contracting businesses. I watched him fail. I watched him sell. I learned a lot of that firsthand. And of course, while you're in school, being the daughter of a contractor, what do you do in the summertime? You answer the phone, you got to make money, you pitch out, you run parts to different job sites. And so I began to see a lot of the ins and outs of business. I always knew I loved business. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And my dad actually gave me the opportunity. And as the boss's daughter, you kind of think that you own the place anyway. So you just boss people around, But because of that, you learn a lot of perspectives with business. Still, there's a lot you don't know. Later on, fast forward, I went off to college and I started working for another contractor across the country over in Oregon, doing marketing. Learned a lot there. It's all about education, right? And then I worked for a digital software company in 2005. We went public in 2007 and we went through a merger in 2011 and got bought out. And then I came back to Georgia because my dad, the contractor, kept calling and, with his ideas. And I, said, Dad, quit calling me, do something. Well, he was calling me not for my advice, but because we were friends. And so, of course, we were always talking about his ideas. And he says, finally, Danielle, I can't, I need your help. Well, when your dad calls, you kind of have to answer, right? I knew that if I didn't help and follow through with his ideas with him, I would always regret it. And what his idea is he found a way to help contractors price their jobs that would be more profitable. And so the whole premise was, hey, let's walk into a contractor's office on a Tuesday to put money in their bank by payroll on Friday. And so I moved back. I left the company I was with in California, moved back to Georgia, and we spent a year building a company called the New Flat Rate. And that's what I do today. Is I'm currently the president of the New Flat Rate, and we do pricing, and we're a software company for contractors. Long story short.
Yeah, that's great. No, and then we've actually done a couple of series in the past on flat rate as well. So maybe we can come back and talk a little bit about something to do with that in the future. That'd be good. I know it's always a good topic of conversation with people in our community. They're always asking about different flat rate options and how that. I think we're a little bit behind. I think over here in Australia with flat rate, I think it's sort of been a bit slow to adapt, a bit slow to be adopted. It's been around for a long time, but I think there's a bit of apprehension.
Sure.
And there's also been some bottlenecks with integrations and technology and a lot of the guys, especially the listeners and viewers of this show, a lot of them are using job management tools, and there's some bottlenecks with how they speak to each other. The ongoing bane of my existence when it comes to technology and getting them all to speak to each other. So it's nothing new on that front, but it's always something of interest for sure. So cool. Well, we may as well jump into, I suppose overall, within this series, I suppose we're trying to eliminate those some of those arguments, that we spoke about a little bit before, in the space of, I'll never have a business that I could sell, or the business is me. Like having a clear exit strategy, and it's almost cliche. Like you hear those sayings, plan, failure to plan is planning to fail, and all this kind of stuff. But like I know like the exit strategy is something that probably 1% of people would have in place when they start up their business. And as a result, they never really reverse engineer that down to the timeline, down to the yearly goals, 5-yearly goals, all that kind of stuff.
I like how you say it, Matt, that most of them don't have it when they start their business. And then after they've started, what happens? They get too busy, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm too busy. Sure, I need that. But like you said, it's kind of like the utopia. I don't need the exit strategy that's way down the line. Or they're at the point where I wish I could sell my business, but that'll never happen to me. I wish somebody would come offer me money. And something I heard my dad say all my life is, hey, I would gladly sell my business for $1 and I'll give you the $1 to buy it, because of the frustration of running a service company.
Well, and to be fair, any company, if you,
yeah,
I mean, I know we both speak to trades and contractors, but I think for the better part, that frustration is pretty congruent and across vertical.
It is.
But yeah, I think like fundamentally, this is something that you certainly never get taught at trade school in Australia, and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get taught this anywhere in the world. Having that clear, and I think this is part of the problem. Like people go into business for perhaps not the wrong reasons, but certainly not understanding the dynamic of business and not understanding the variables that connect to running a successful business, different structures, strategies, and all this kind of stuff. And sure, they may be good at swinging hammers and laying pipe, but they're certainly not, might not have a good grasp on a lot of the business fundamentals, which is why we have a podcast.
True. Well, and so many of us go into business because we can solve a problem, we have a skill, and that's what we want to do. And then we quit working for somebody else, start working for ourselves, because isn't it that we want more freedom? Whether we want more money, so we want financial freedom, or maybe we want to be the boss and we want more time. We think that if we have our own business, as a business owner, we're going to have more time, when really we don't. We have way less time, isn't that right?
Right.
But I think the exit strategy, we're thinking of freedom, like freeing up our future time.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on an important point there. I think when people do go into business, again, without fully understanding the complexities and the intricacies of running a successful business, they're kind of ignorant. And they go in thinking, I'm just going to have all this time and all this, I'm going to, all of a sudden, all of my problems working for this company are going to just dissipate, which is normally what happens is those problems compound, and all of a sudden, you've gone from having one job to having 20. And
Yes.
thrown in with all of the other things that you would never have foreseen, like HR problems, superannuation, tax, all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden you've got to, go from being the guy that installs roofs, pitches roofs, to the guy that, is all of a sudden a business tycoon, So anyway, I suppose getting on to like planning the exit strategy, which is, topic of this episode, the first episode of the series, which we've titled Exit Strategy versus Wishful Hoping. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that was actually something a colleague and coach of mine, many, many years ago, 15 years ago, told me. He goes, the difference between a goal and a wish is the strategy. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I've said it many times on the show, I was that guy that for years and years, because I'd read somewhere or someone had told me, you need to write your goals down. So I'd go and write my goals down. And then, you keep reading and saying, 90% of people that write their goals down hit their goals, and I'm like, well, I'm certainly in the 10% here, because I'm not hitting anything. Little did I know that writing the goals down and sticking them in a drawer or having them in a Word document on your computer for the whole year doesn't count. You've actually got to have the goals written down
and follow it.
And you've got to revisit them, and then you've got to create a strategy and way to get there. It's not just like, you're writing something and all of a sudden they appear. Unfortunately, we hear all these stories about people that does happen to, but, I think the unsexy part of that story is the hard work that goes into designing and making that become a reality. So
isn't that true? But it's so hard and so big in our heads, the writing down of the goal. You're ahead of most people. I mean, you say you're just the 10%, but most people, it's hard for some people to write down the goal, the fact that you did it. So if we were going to think about exit strategy and, oh gosh, this is this big, scary, audacious, hairy, fear thing of how do I even do that? Where do I begin? But starting like where you said, Matt, with the goal, do I ever want to? So maybe start with the why. It doesn't have to be that hard. We can make it simple. Do you ever want to exit? This is where we have to become a little bit more of a realist and realize someday I will exit, whether or not I want to or when it is and what it looks like. That's why we have to have a little bit of a strategy, because you will exit someday.
Whether it's voluntary or
right?
forced.
Yeah. You know, and it's sometimes we don't want to be realistic and we don't want to think about that. And then the wishful thinking of, oh, it'll just happen. Somebody's going to walk by and give me $1 million or, $50 million or whatever we feel that our valuation is. It doesn't really happen that way. And so the reality of, yes, someday I want to exit. What do I want that to look like? But starting back with the why. Do I want to exit because I can't stand my business? It's so hard to run. I'm so stressed out. I'm getting more gray hairs by the minute. Or do I want to exit because I want more freedom? So maybe exiting is actually selling your business and walking away as a retirement plan. Or maybe it's staying on as owner, but having somebody else run the day-to-day so that you can get into your next hobby.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the part of the progression. It's pretty unrealistic, I think, to presume that I wouldn't be going along to somebody and buying a business that was dependent on any one person, So I think that's part of the progression, with exit strategies. Well, okay, whether or not I want to be in the business or not, I need to have a business that's set up so that it can run without me, so that if somebody does want to buy it, or when I do put it on the market, I'm not part of that sale.
Right.
I mean, sure, that's not to say that you're not going to want to help people transition and, migrate it into their business and whatever. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be selling your business and just buying yourself another job, that comes with a whole nother world of problems. And that happens a lot. People do that.
Yes,
they're like, oh, I sold my business. And what are you doing now? Oh, I'm just working for the guy that bought it. I've been there for 5 years. I hate it. I'm like, okay, great. So,
right. So why not think about building the business that you love and that you want to run? And then that's the one that you're going to sell.
Yeah. So I suppose that, there's a myriad of conversations that could tie into that. Everything from, what we spoke about offline with, systems and, hiring, and then, technology, of course. All these kind of things tie into that conversation. So I suppose, without getting too far off track, we're talking about in the planning stage of your exit strategy, what's an important, I suppose, roadmap, or what's an important framework for people to, evaluate when they're doing this exercise? They're like, all right, well, let's talk about an exit strategy. What does it actually look like? Let's map this out. How do you tie timelines in? How do you do all this stuff?
Great question. You can definitely tie it to all of the tried and true real things. Starting being a little bit realistic here, it's all right. Why do I want to sell? Why do I want to exit? And what for me as an owner personally works? What works for me? When do I want to? Well, for example, for myself, my daughter's 5. By the time she's 15, yeah. Do I want to be more involved in her life? Yeah. When she's, you know what I mean? Thinking of your family and what's going on. When do you want more freedom? Are you 60 years old and you want to retire at 65? You want to be done? Or are you 50 and you've got, what is it? So start there with the why. And then let's say, all right, what's your revenue? What's your profit? What are your numbers? And then very often, not even just in the trades, but in, business, there's those CPAs that are the owners. They're the CPA mindset and they know their numbers, right? They know all their KPIs. They know what to track. And then there's the entrepreneurs on the other side and we're like, KPIs, what are those? We don't really know how to track, right? And so a friend of mine, Dominic Rubino, he runs a podcast called...
I've had Dominic on the show.
Okay, perfect. So I love Dominic. Well, let me tell you what he says about this because it's so good I have to share it. He says, Danielle, if your number one competitor, so think about, who's always taking all your calls and your jobs, your number one competitor comes over to you and calls you up one day or, stops by the shop and says, hey, Danielle, something happened in my family and although it's a tragedy, I'm so sorry and sad about it, but, I've got to have to step out of the business for a while. But I want to offer my company to you, would you buy it? Dominic says, what would you have to know about your competitor to be able to make that decision right then and there? Well, I'd want to know, what their revenue was, what their recurring revenue was, what their debt was, what's their cancellation rate, maybe their service agreement customers. What would you, wherever you're at in your business pathway in your mind, what would you want to know before making a decision about buying your competitor?
Mm-hmm.
And so as I thought through that and I listed a couple out, he says, okay, Danielle, those are the numbers to start tracking in your business.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very simple, taking it back to reality.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. That does bring me back to that conversation. I just had a quick look. It was episode 175. It's going back quite a long time with Dominic. And that episode title was How to Build a Business for Exit. So there you go.
Cool.
Yeah, no, and those things, one thing that has just popped into my mind as well is I know a lot of the listeners and viewers out there are in situations where they may have like partners in the business, or they might have, it might be a partnership. They might have gone into business with a friend or a colleague or whatever, or they might have merged two businesses. And it may have even been Dominic that was telling me this, like it's important in that situation to have a clear exit strategy for the business, so that, and that might mean a buyout, or it might mean you sell the business and you both get out, or whatever it might be, but have some sort of clear defining, moment where you make a decision on what that's going to look like, because then because I think a lot of people have those, you hear it all the time, like people in partnerships, just it sort of destructs after a while for various reasons.
Yeah.
A lot of it is not having like clear outlines of, first of all, roles and responsibilities, but second of all, that exit path and what that might look like. And, life changes.
Yeah.
They have children, things pop up in life, like things will change, so it pays to have those things in line.
It does. And, especially if you have business partners, it's important, Matt, to do things right. And so to have an actual attorney write up your agreements, to have those contracts in place. And those are simple. It's easy to go into business with a buddy or even a family member, and then you keep going down the road, and all of a sudden it's been 5-10 years and you really don't have actual contracts in place. And then the water's really muddy. So definitely shore that up, get somebody involved, just pay to outsource it to an attorney, get legal counsel, and get the contracts written up. So with exit strategy, the beginning phases, it's like when you plant a garden, you're going to plant today for the hope and the knowing of the future growth of the garden. So with your exit strategy, it can be overwhelming thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to start planning, but it can change. So you might think I want to sell in 10 years. You might think I never want to sell. I want to own it forever. It's okay to change, but just start getting something in writing, start spending time thinking about and being realistic that someday I will exit. What would the ideal scenario be? And then thinking too, you might not know your valuation today, but start asking your CPA, like, what do you think my valuation of my business is today? What do you think? And start asking those conversation numbers, and then start asking what would make it more valuable. And I know we're going to talk about that in our next episode, the value building. So I don't want to give away too many secrets now for that. But thinking of that just to start moving forward, and then building the business that is going to be more sellable by getting the processes in place. And it comes down a lot, Matt, to the people on the bus, the people that are on your team. It took
more Jim Collins quotes, hey? They're just every podcast I do.
It's good stuff. You can't help it.
I know. I'm sitting here. I just keep this book in front of me now because every time I do a podcast, someone mentions something from.
Oh. Yeah.
It's as well, I think, like important to, like over the years, I've through speaking to great people, they've made me realize that it's not so much if you're building a business with an exit strategy, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to exit, like you just touched on. It just means that you've got a business that you can exit. And so it's a great position to be in when you've got a business that could potentially be acquired, even if you have no intention of leaving, or you're enjoying being there or whatever it might be. That's still like a pretty good position to be in, where someone could come along tomorrow and go, whatever happens, because you don't know what happens in life. You could get sick, your family you could relocate. Who knows what happens? Like there could be a global pandemic or something crazy. There's all these different things that could pop up, and having that, being in a position where you are kind of, you're more agile and you can make these calls. Like I think that's something that we shouldn't overlook.
Yeah, starting the conversations is a big step forward.
Yeah. So, in my experience, I'm not quite sure what your experience is, but like in relation to exit strategy, it does tie into goals, and it does tie into, what you want to get out of the business and the legacy you want to leave, and a number of different things. But essentially, having a clear indication of what that looks like at what point in time. So say in, 10 years time, you want to be, you want to have a team of, 10 people, and you want to you want to be focusing more on sales, or you want to be running the guys on site, or whatever it might be, and then building out all of the stuff around that so that, that can happen. This is something that's an evolution. It's by no means a destination. I don't think anyone is like, oh, I've finally got there, like everything changes. And I've spoken about this on the show as well. Your interests and your passions within your business will change as well. Like
they do.
And I used to hate the numbers side of the business, and then all of a sudden now I really like it. Like it's because it's kind of like I can kind of gamify it. It's kind of like sport after a while, But so
you've gotten to that place. I like it. So you mentioned earlier, kind of like the pathway and the roadmap of, hey, here's the goal, here's what I want to go, and then backing out of it. And that's really how you get there. That's how you begin the strategy planning, right? You back out of it. Hey, I want to sell at $10 million in 3 years. So who do I need to have in place? Well, you got to get your org chart, right? So go to the whiteboard. And if you're an entrepreneur like so many of us, and you're busy and you have 1,000 things on your desk, you don't have time to write down an org chart, then grab somebody and have them sit there and do it with you. Get some accountability, whether it's somebody on your team, business partner, a friend, a business coach, and then just go to the whiteboard, write out your org chart.
I've actually got a course on this. I've built that. I built a course on org chart building and that stuff. It's available at the site shed. I've never actually. We need to promote that more. It's funny.
Yes.
We sort of did it as like a private promotional thing, but it's built. It's ready to go. So for you listeners out there that want to get hold of that, reach out to us in the Facebook group, and I'll post the link to it. It's pretty cool.
Cool. You should, because you know what? It's like we get an org chart and then we don't know what to do next. Well, you got to start putting it in the holes for the future positions, right? And that something that's important too is recognize how many spots you yourself as the owner are filling.
Of course.
Like put your name on there. Are you acting as the marketer? Are you acting as the salesperson? Are you acting as the tech out in the field? Are you in all those roles? And then you can start backing out again the plan of how to replace yourself in those positions and what that looks like.
And in my experience, it's the only way you'll ever remove yourself from doing something you don't want to do is by clearly having that mapped out in the org chart, and then documenting those roles and responsibilities, and then training people on how to do what you want them to do so you haven't got to. And I think it's really important for trade businesses, especially trade business owners, is to understand how this is relevant to you guys, because like realistically, you guys are good at building, you're good at plumbing, you're good at electrical. That's what you train to do. That's what your specialty is. You're not good at accounts receivable. You're not good at marketing. You're not good at like a lot of these other things. And that's not to say that you don't have to be good at it. You just need to have people on your team that are. And so it ties right in what you're saying to the exit strategy piece of, as the owner, we get in our way all the time. We get in our team's way. And so true success is when you're able to walk away and let your people grow the business and become who they are, pull out their passions and their, like when they really buy into the business and the plan and where it's going, and they become a part of it, and you let them do what they do and they grow your business and you can walk away. I mean, that is really success. But until you get out of the way, they can't grow, especially if you just keep putting a ceiling on top of them because you're trying to do it yourself. And we all know from all the books that we read, hire people that are better than you, hire people that are smarter than you. So, real succession planning, I think, also plays into, who are you putting on the bus, if we're going to call it that? What kind of people are you hiring? We paid a long time ago, Matt. It was a lot for us at the time. It was years and years ago when, we were just starting out. We didn't have a whole lot of money in capital. So we paid a company $2,500 to write a job ad for us so that we could try to hire the right person. So we put out this, we paid $2,500, which was a lot of money for us, and they write this job ad. And we start getting, post it online all over, and we start getting applicants for this position. And it was like an office management position. And we start getting these applicants coming in, and all of them were way overqualified for what we were used to seeing. And that it opened our eyes to the kind of talent that is really out there. So often we can be stuck on our plane and our playing field thinking that, there's just mediocre talent, and that's not true. There's a lot of high-level people that could be on your team. And what would your team look like if you actually had those high-level people? All the people we were interviewing, we couldn't afford, because it was that high-level talent, but it let us know they were there. And so our expectations changed. We began to expect that kind of talent within our company. And then we'd hire what we could afford at the time, but always looking for the
the more talent to bring in. So over time, of course, we were able to do that. But we really relay it back then to the early day when we started to see, wait a minute, what would it look like to have more executive presence and more roles around here?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a whole another conversation when we started talking about recruiting and things like that. But I mean, we've done loads of podcasts on this, and
get me back on track.
It's all relevant to exit strategy because, as you say, you need to hire people to remove yourself from whatever area that you don't want to be operating in, or whatever area that you shouldn't be operating in. More importantly, so I mean, we can probably get close to wrapping this episode up, and I think as a general framework, and by all means, my takeaways is really, start with the end in mind, and that might sound cliche, but really understand, I suppose, why you've gone into business and what you want to get out of it. And there could be personal goals, it could be, social goals, it could be a combination, it could be, family related, it could be the legacy you want to leave, it could be all these different things. And once you've got a clear vision on that, you've really got to start reverse engineering, what does the business look like at that point? And then how am I going to get to that point, and break it down into bite-sized chunks? And those chunks can be, 5 years, into 2 years, into 1 year, into quarterly, into, into monthly, and then bust them down into little, bite-sized deliverables that you can deliver on every day and week, And that sounds like a painstaking task, but I mean, it's the only way that I've ever seen like big picture goals get achieved. It's by breaking them down into, small chunks. What's that saying? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, or something like that? So, anything you wanted to recap on?
No, that was good. I totally agree with you. And it is work, and it's called work for a reason, so we just have to start with our why. Why do we want to exit? Because we're going to exit anyway. So let's choose the exit that we want, and then back it out, but spend the time working on it now.
So in the next episode, I'm guessing we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of the, building out some of those assets and building out some of those key areas of business that would essentially be appealing to somebody that might be looking to acquire a business, or at least have those things in line so that you've got, like we were saying earlier, a saleable business. So we might wrap this episode up, and we're going to come back with episode 2 of the Exit Strategy versus Wishful Hoping series. That episode is going to be called Value Building. This episode was called How to Begin Planning Your Exit Strategy, joined by Danielle Putnam from the New Flat Rate over in the US. Danielle, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to checking in with you in the next episode.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.